This is Karis Alexander with Deep Truth Media. It was Socrates who had said that he was wiser than his contemporaries because he alone knew that he knew nothing. This was a rhetorical device. Galileo could have said with truth that he knew something, but knew he knew very little, while his Aristotelian contemporaries knew nothing, but thought they knew much. Knowledge, as opposed to fantasies of wish fulfillment, is difficult to come by. A little contact with real knowledge makes fantasies acceptable or less acceptable. As a matter of fact, knowledge is even harder to come by than Galileo supposed, and much that he believed was only approximate. But in the process of acquiring knowledge at once secure and general, Galileo took the first great step. He is therefore the father of modern times. Whatever we may like or dislike about the age in which we live in, its increase of population, its improvement in health, its trains, motor cars, radio, politics, and advertisements of soap all emanate from Galileo. Just wanted to share that with you because it's through these intellectual thinkers that our culture that we're currently living through, this existence, was created by just a very few people. And so many of us don't realize that we are controlled by this power control force. And so many of us really don't come to realize that we are mind controlled, and that mind control behaviors are what have kept us stuck in toxic routines, which we repeat in our relationships and through our habits, which is basically dehumanizing us, killing us, and those around us. So when you are awake, you are outside the power control force's control. When you are able to self-reflect and think critically, you are able to gain control over your mind. The first rule of healing is to bring the dark up for review. That is the shadow aspects, which you may be acting out unconsciously. Witness them, clear them, whereby dissolving them and freeing you from the confines of this imposed system of consciousness. And so, as you're noticing, probably if you look at the numbers on my YouTube channel, the numbers are going down. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a reflection of the information that's being shared, and that it does not resonate with the masses, and that it does not fall under their socially induced consensus reality that they're being spoon-fed by the power control force. I am deconstructing consciousness. I don't anticipate yet that a lot of people will gravitate to this information, this data stream of consciousness, because most people are immersed in a program, a reality, which is being spoon-fed to them through narrative scripts, the media, and all the intellectual systems, because humanity is a well-studied species. And so the power control force are about power control. They don't want you to be critically thinking for yourself. They despise that. They want you to not think for yourself and to follow a standard protocol of information that they feed to you so that you don't think. They fear your capacity to think critically for yourself. That's what they fear. So naturally they would undermine your capacity to do that in order to control you, right? Yeah, you have to keep these things in mind. These controllers of the system think differently than you do. So the current state of our focus for our culture right now is on dehumanization. That is, our culture is meant to alter and gradually change you by pushing the envelope step by step to total degradation. That's why culture is there. That's why you're being shepherded, so to say, into constant change. That's why each country, when they signed the UN agreements in 1946, set up departments of culture so they could fund all the novelists that would put politically correct stuff into their books and all their propaganda and media. They make movies and use scripts writers for the movies and so on, right down to cartoon makers. They're all funded by your tax money to brainwash you and degrade you down to what your governments want you to be. Or the power control force, really, who are behind the governments, easily managed and degraded. They want you to be easily manageable and degraded, totally dysfunctional and perverted. Because once you have a perverted society, no one cares what happens to the person down the street or next door. And anything goes. Anything goes. But it's always directed by those who rule, the power control force. It's about ruling you easier. Standardization is the order of the day, so that society runs like a well-oiled machine. So I want to remind you of a disclaimer that, as I share in this new posting, Symbols of the Fetal Drama, Eurovision 2014 Rise Like a Phoenix winner, Conchita equals conception. Columbus's Santa Maria found after 500 years. And the Knights Templar equals the placental origins of Christianity. The disclaimer that I want to give you is that use your own discretion. This sharing and the next couple of sharings, and maybe all the sharings, may activate some of the memories of your own birth or origin of birth and cause some disruption in your energetic field. So just notice if this provokes any of your own memories. This is not easy stuff to share. So just know that you might be activated through just hearing this information. And so that's an opportunity for you to bear witness to how you might be responding to this information, this data stream. And I hope that you enjoy this piece and that I'm able to express and share with you, and that you get a deeper comprehension of the underlying foundation or the rhythmic pattern which the power control force obscure from you. That is this rhythmic pattern of the fetal drama and how it plays out on the physical world stage, which we're going to dive into. Because unless we know at a very, very deep, at the root of what we're dealing with here, which is obscured from so many, we really don't, we're at a disadvantage. Forget about the fact that we are being spoon-fed narratives and scripts on the surface level. You know, I mean, that's just one level of the program that we are conned into, this system of consciousness. That's why you have con at the beginning of the word consciousness, because you're being conned. Everything that you are being spoon-fed is a lie. And all this information, these intellectual systems, are lies that you've bought into. Because what? Awareness is can be easily seduced. Awareness is malleable, is vulnerable. The awareness that is you. And as you experience awareness in physical form, it makes you more susceptible to the programming devices that the power control force impose upon you through their other technology, this technological system. So you are well studied, and the power control force about power control, and they are about not losing their control. So just know that we are living through a culture or a program that was devised hundreds of years ago, or even over 100 years ago. We're living through a planned society, and they've already planned out for the next generations their society. So these people at the upper echelons of this system are about power and control. So you have to understand what you're dealing with. And you choose to deconstruct consciousness. It's a very big, auspicious undertaking, if one so chooses to do so. So the womb is the foundation upon which this artificial physical world is built. That is the womb of the mother, or the womb of consciousness, is where you are provided a glimpse upon which the basis of your life experience is manufactured, yet obscured from view through massive propaganda, symbols, and narratives disguise this truth. It is only when we come to know consciously the historical group fantasies we unconsciously share as a species that we can communicate and act upon, together, that we decrease their delusional hold on us, therefore allowing each of us to dismantle this system of consciousness. We are engaging in an experiment. I don't believe this has ever been done before. So let's engage the experiment and see what happens. Now, to understand the fetal drama clearly is to see the fetus as it begins its mental life in active relationship with one vital object, its own placenta. If you don't know what a placenta looks like, I have a little picture in the article which I'll post that I'm reading from in the description on this YouTube channel. But I encourage you to go look up what a placenta is for yourself, so you can have a view of it. I encourage you always to research on your own. Don't just listen to what it is that I'm saying and take it as truth or verbatim as your knowledge. The mother and the fetus co-create the placenta together in the womb, and the fetus is dependent on the placenta for nutrition, and constant cleansing of the blood is crucial to the fetus's existence. The fetus responds to every decrease in placental functioning, whereby pumping polluted blood through the placenta when it is experiencing visible anger, as shown by thrashing movements and elevated heart rates due to whatever is going on with the mother at the time. Therefore, it's crucial for you to understand how this fetal drama works. So pay close attention as this fetal drama is repeated endlessly, and its rhythmic pattern is what keeps you under massive hypnosis, whether you realize it. And so if you want to break the spell, as I mentioned earlier, you must get to the root of the matter, no pun intended. So what is the fetal drama in a nutshell? The fetus can be seen to experience cycles over 9 months of peaceful activity and painful hypophagia, periods of thrashing about, and then restored quiet periods as the placenta begins to pump newly oxygenated bright red blood again. So remember this pattern of periods of peacefulness, peaceful activity, and painful hypoxia. So peaceful activity and painful hypoxia, periods of thrashing about, and then restored periods of quiet periods as the placenta begins to pump newly oxygenated bright blood, red blood again. So very much like what happens through the narratives and scripts that are playing out through the media. We have periods of not much activity as we're noticing right now. There's not much going on in the news that there's no major events happening. So I consider this a period of quiet time in the media. But then there are periods like last month and the month before where we had a lot of activity going on in the media. So this is this same motion in terms of the fetal drama, peaceful activity, and then periods of intense, painful hypoxia, which translates into massive disorder on the earth plane. There's periods of thrashing about and restored periods of quiet periods is very similar to the fetal drama. I hope I'm kind of explaining that to you in a way that you're understanding, or hope my explanation is coming across. It is important to remember this rhythmic pattern is the foundation upon which the power control forces have built their system of consciousness. Periods of peacefulness in the world, periods of wars and revolutions, right? It's just a cycle that keeps going on and on and on. It's important to note that the fetal drama starts at when? Conception, which is when you receive your first imprints from your father's sperm. So whatever he's thinking at the time, and whatever your mother's thinking at the time is going to impact the egg as well. So whatever the father's sperm and your mother's egg and what they were feeling in the very act of conception, that is imprinted into your blueprint, which is, as you can see, long before birth. And as the fetus grows in the womb, it is being continuously imprinted by its mother. As the fetus learns, the good feelings are often interrupted by painful feelings, which it is helpless to avert. Very much what happens in one's life, that we have periods of good feelings, and then we're interrupted by periods of painful feelings, right? And then it's once peaceful womb, in terms of the fetus, back to the fetus here, slowly grows more crowded as the fetus reaches its third trimester, becomes less nurturant and more polluted until finally the fetus becomes liberated only by the cataclysmic battle, which is the upheaval of birth itself. It's important to point out that the fetus is not only distressed when the mother smokes, drinks, or takes drugs, it is also affected both biologically and psychologically by the mother's fear, anger, and depression. In fact, the pregnant mother's emotions affect the physical and emotional development of the fetus, and numerous research studies have shown that massive quantities of stimulation, particularly intensely painful experiences, result in severe trauma, particularly after birth, when the ego is too immature to prevent itself from being overwhelmed by the effects. Therefore, the fact that the fetal distress is traumatic can hardly be doubted, as the fetus does not have the psychological defense mechanism to handle massive anxiety and rage. So what I'm getting to here is that at conception, a majority of people who have children or bring children in this world don't even know until about maybe the woman goes to the hospital or goes to the doctor and finds out she's pregnant, that she's going to be conceiving a child. So the first trimester, the child doesn't even know that, or the mother doesn't even know that the child is even there growing in its womb. And so the child may be feeling like it's abandoned, or the fetus may be feeling like it's abandoned. So imagine how many children are coming into this world with mothers and fathers who are not consciously conceiving this child into the world. And many women don't even realize that they're pregnant until after the first trimester. So that's interesting for the child, that the fetus that's growing in the womb. And so for many of you who may feel that, well, you've never had any sense of abandonment, like in physical, you never were abandoned as a child, but you have a sense of abandonment. It may stem from the fact that your mother may not have known, or you were not conceived. You just kind of happened onto this earth plane. You kind of were an accident. That would bring up feelings of abandonment. So maybe some of you can identify with that. There are lots of imprinting that once you start doing the excavation work on your own prenatal or birth trauma, and then you start doing regressional work, it becomes quite revealing how some of the imprinting that you have you feel is not even yours, but it's actually from your parents, and your ancestral imprinting as well, and genetic imprinting. Through the work that I've done on myself, I've realized that a lot of stuff that I've cleared recently is not even mine. And that's the beauty of the work, is that you can get to a point where you're clearing, you're thinking it's your stuff, but it's really someone else's that's been imposed upon you. It's quite fascinating. Now, the power control force understand how conception, prenatal imprinting, and the trauma of birth impact the life of a newborn child, and why it is important for them to build their power control system around conception. Can you understand why that might be? Why they would have to build a control system around conception? And why is it that most people don't even know how to properly conceive a child? They know nothing about how to take care of a child. How many of us have been brought into this world with parents who didn't really have any schooling? There's no school for parents to teach parents how to raise a child, how to bring them up, right? My parents didn't know what they were doing. I'm sure most of you could probably say that your parents didn't really know what they were doing. But that's all by design, because they don't want to know how to bring a child, or how to conceive a child, how to bring a child up into this physical world system. They want to sever the mother-child bond at all costs. And so why would they want to do that? So that they have more power control over you. If they break the mother-child bond, that is, and humanity's capacity for love, then they can have more power over you. You have to think these things through. These people, they are strategists. They develop scenarios and simulations, and they look at potential probabilities and outcomes. I mean, these people, are very smart. They're about power and control. So don't underestimate their power to manipulate you into their system. Now, here's an example of how the origin of the fetal drama plays out on the physical world stage, and how the power control force copy as faithfully as possible, and at the same time must remind us as little as possible of the primal trauma connected with it. That is, the trauma of birth. On May 10th, 2014, via the song Rise Like a Phoenix, sung by Conchita wins the Eurovision Song Contest, and Conchita means conception. So there is an example right in your face. Why would they have a woman's name Conchita? Worst. And she sings a song, Rise Like a Phoenix, because it's the fetal drama being played out on a subliminal level, which most of humanity would not pick up because they don't understand the underlying rhythmic pattern. But when you know what the rhythmic pattern is, then you can see this stuff. And I have posted a link to the article. on her. Conchita is from Austria. It is interesting to note that the 8.8 magnitude megaquake that hit Chile in 2010 near a place called Conception, interesting, which is Conception, just months before the mine disaster's rescue there. There is also a strong interaction between Eurovision Conchita and the 2014 Turkey mine disaster. The latter took place in Manisa, province of Turkey, known among other things for its Hittite carving of the goddess Cybele, who, in Greek religion, notably had a transgender priesthood, thus powerfully resonating with the transgender drag nature of Conchita's Eurovision showstopper. Conchita is a drag queen. Who won the award last month at Eurovision for her song that she sung Rise Like a Phoenix. So they continue their narrative with the phoenix here. I've talked about the phoenix many, many times, the phoenix rising. The phoenix also is connected typically thought to live for 500 years. It dies and then comes back to life, like the apparent discovery of Christopher Columbus' sunken ship Santa Maria, which made headlines on May the 13th. That's 3 days after Conchita wins the award, 2014, the same day as the Turkey mine disaster. And guess what? Unbeknownst to most of humanity, the Holy Cross, which you can see in this picture on Christopher Columbus' sunken ship, in the article, the Holy Cross symbolizes the placenta, imagery of antiquity. But most people wouldn't know that. Once this placental origin of the Holy Cross is recognized, much of the imagery of Christian ritual becomes clarified. That is the cleansing and rebirth ceremony, which is really just the fetal drama in a nutshell, or repetition of that in a nutshell. And then I have a picture of the wreck of Columbus Santa Maria after 500 years in the link to the article posted on May the 13th. Now, on the sails of the Santa Maria were red crosses, the type then associated with the Knights Templar. Columbus married into a Templar family. The Knights Templar, as with practically all groups associated with the Holy Grail, are thought to have been worshippers of the goddess, or as the Da Vinci Code states, the sacred feminine, the mother. Again, reference to the mother, the sacred feminine, the mother's womb. In Christian terms, that would be Mary, Mary Magdalene, and the Virgin Mary. Well, the Virgin Mary is just, again, a reference to the womb of the mother's womb. It is important to note that when you understand the underlying program that this system of consciousness is operating, you know what clues to look for, and that the phoenix and conception are just examples that I found through media that is obscuring the fetal drama, that is the underlying rhythmic pattern that is manipulating humanity, which allows us to understand why the power control force systematically take it upon themselves to break the mother-child bond and humanity's capacity for love through the promotion of sexual love for both sexes, which reaches its climax in the mating of two beings, which for most of humanity is an unconscious enactment of the return to the mother. And yet, for woman, proves to be the most sublime attempt partially to re-establish the primal situation between mother and child, which only finds its complete realization in an embryo. That is how the blessed primal state is reached, by passive reproduction, that is by means of pregnancy and birth of a woman's own child. So really, what I'm saying here is that the woman can partially reach or come to the realization and return to the mother's womb through having her own child. She has that opportunity although passively, through passive reproduction, by the means of pregnancy and the birth of her own child. And yet it is true that the fetal drama often gets linked up to fertility as motivations to elements of the fetal drama. However, it is important to understand that every symbolic vagina or womb or mother figure is not a wish to have more babies. It is a very deep wish to be a fetus in the mother's womb. It's a very deep wish to return to the mother's womb. The men, on the other hand, through the idea of conception from the beginning, remains attached to the original fetal experience in the womb that is depicted by the mother's genitals through mother, lover, and wife. It is important to know that both sexes can become neurotic, which is what the power control force want, when they wish only to gratify the primal libido for the mother as compensation for the birth trauma, not by means of sexual gratification designed for them by the power control force, but by the means of the original form of infantile gratification, whereby they inevitably stumble upon the anxiety borders of the birth trauma. So it's infantile gratification that we are seduced into this sexual energy. You know, whenever you're attracted to someone, it's because that a person is activating memories of your birth, your trauma of birth, and the infantile gratifications that you have not met through the birth. So anyone that you are sexually attracted to, you know, or there's a pattern that keeps coming up for you around sexuality, your sexuality, and the types of people that you're attracting in your life, it's because it's this primal urge to merge with the mother, the original fetal drama, the trauma of birth. But it's obscured from you because it's infantile gratification that you are seeking, not sexual gratification, which the power control force manipulate you into believing that is what you're wanting. It's infantile. Because when you can remove and work through your infantile needs, the infantile gratification, those sexual attractions that keep you hooked into the system, when you can work through that stuff, do that regressional work, you'll be free of the system. I promise you. But most people won't do that work. So therefore, it is the infantile gratification that keeps us forever hooked into the system of consciousness. And it is this infantile gratification that each of us must heal in order to transcend the system of consciousness, this con that we've been conned into. And this is how we break the spell of this system of consciousness. Now, one might ask themselves, why would the power control force impose narratives and scripts around sex, conception, and the trauma of birth, disguised through symbols and all their intellectual systems, such as religion, science, psychology, etc.? Well, in order to hijack humanity's perception towards a shared group fantasy of the original experience, a being in the original womb. Very similar to that of a fetus in the womb of its mother, attached to an umbilical cord and its placenta, which is why we have constant wars and revolutions as they originate. They represent the original battle in the womb, which symbolizes and subliminally activates every human being's trauma of their own cataclysmic birth. Again, but all this is obscured from you. So, that's why we are going through this rebirthing process. Maybe you can understand at a deeper level now. We are evolving and being what? Reborn. We're rising like a phoenix. Just the fetal drama and the trauma of the memory of your birth being repeated over and over and over again. So, I hope you enjoyed this sharing. Stuff is pretty deep. And what will this metamorph into? I have no idea. But it may activate some of your memories. And so if you're activated, some memories come up for you, take notice of that. Breathe through those memories. Right? They're coming up for you to clear. You know, what are the dramas and traumas of the memories that keep coming up for you that stop you from coming to know self as awareness, that stop you from moving forward? What are the programs that you're running that keep coming up that cause you tremendous amounts of fear and anxiety? And if at any time there was tremendous amounts of fear and anxiety on this planet, that time is now. It's palpable. And so this is an opportunity for you to what? To transcend this ego consciousness system and move through the heart into the knowing the truth of who you are as awareness. I thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. And if you'd like to join me on Facebook, my name is Kerrace, Kerrace Alexander. Thank you. Goodbye.